New video tonight, you see it right there from CENTCOM, which says it's of an American aircraft firing a missile and disabling an empty tanker trying to reach an Iranian port. It's part of the naval blockade, which resumed yesterday. And as day 5 of airstrikes unfolded today, CNN has learned that President Trump has been receiving options for expanding military operations. According to 2 people familiar with the matter, it came up in a Situation Room meeting yesterday. Also, just a short time ago, the president went online announcing the release of an American woman who he says was detained in Iran in 2024. And a source familiar with the matter tells us she was detained, charged, and released on bail, but not allowed until now to leave the country. The president at the end said he appreciated the gesture of goodwill. Nice words, a nice action followed by nice words. How do you get to the next step and get progress?
First of all, it is such positive news whenever we have an American citizen who's been wrongfully detained free. So this is good news, regardless of what Iranian tensions would be. And I agree, it's an important good faith gesture. Right now, the Trump administration is pursuing what it thinks is a squeeze play. So there's the continuous military strikes, but there's also a naval blockade, which is a separate and very serious act of war in which Iranian ships are not getting in or out. And the extremely generous terms of the MOU that Iran experienced for 30 days enabled this very significant cash windfall, cash influx into Iran because it was able to sell its oil at market prices. And so what the Iranians are fighting about right now is only, as Brett said, who gets to determine transit in the Strait of Hormuz.
This is the Iranian sign-up sheet, basically. If you are a ship and you want to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, they want you to register. This is, what's the name of your vessel and what type of vessel and, what's your flag? All of this is important information for Iran to collect. Now, why does Iran want to collect this? Because it wants to charge tolls. It actually has been charging tolls around $1 to $2 per barrel. It had been doing that until that memorandum of understanding was basically signed. And it was charging around $2 million per tanker. President Trump said, you know what, that's not a terrible idea. Why doesn't the US do that as well? We'll charge 20% of cargo. What would that mean? It would mean around $27 million per tanker. And so, the Gulf nation said that's a non-starter. This is not actually going to happen. And Trump very quickly pulled back on that. What is this all about? Well, Iran wants you to go in a very specific way when you travel through the Strait of Hormuz. It wants you to go around its coast. Now, there is an alternate route. You can get out around the coast of Oman, but Iran can't track you there, and so they have been bombarding ships that are going around that way to prevent them from going that way and going around Iran's coast where you need to register with them. And they said that they've been pretty successful at this. 200 ships, they say, in 3 weeks. Now, we haven't confirmed this, but they say 200 ships in 3 weeks have registered with Iran for the future charging of tolls. And these tolls, as I mentioned, are $2 million. Now, how can they charge those tolls? Well, there's some disputed language in that memorandum of understanding. For the safe passage is the key line there. What does that mean exactly? Well, the United States said free to travel, but Iran said no, only around our coast for the eventual charging of tolls. That's what this dispute is all about. Iran needs this because 50% of the regime's revenue comes from oil. This isn't going away anytime soon.
We're going to hit them very hard tonight. We're going to hit them very hard tomorrow night. We're going to hit them very hard the night after. And then next week it gets really bad for them because next week comes the power plants. Next week comes the bridges. We're going to knock out all their power plants. We're going to knock out all their bridges unless they get to the table and negotiate.
What's the messaging out of Tehran at this point?
Well, Becky, it's defiant, and it's blaming the US for the breakdown of this MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. We heard from the Deputy Foreign Minister saying that Iran is now under no obligation to stick to the MOU, which is namely one of its the things it was supposed to do was to try and open the Strait of Hormuz. It said at this point it's unreasonable and baseless to expect it to carry this out. And beyond that, what we're hearing from the Revolutionary Guard is that they are looking at other ways to halt energy export routes. And of course, that brings our minds to the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, which is further south of Saudi Arabia, feeds into the Red Sea, which, if that were to be interfered with as well, would have a devastating impact on the global economy. We have seen in the past that the Iran-backed Houthi rebels have blocked that route, or they have attacked shipping in that route, certainly in the past. And this is a great concern that there could be both of these straits being affected. You look at the...
So I disagree with Max. I don't think there's any equivalence between the United States and Iran when it comes to our credibility, our military power, our values, and what we stand for on the world stage. To say that there's some equivalence between these two countries, I think is ridiculous.
Well, I mean,
As usual, you're mischaracterizing what I said, Scott. I wasn't
You
saying
said they were the same.
No, I did not say there was any more.
We'll roll the tape later, Max.
No.
You said equally duplicitous.
No.
You said equally duplicitous?
What I said, Scott, let's try to set the record straight. I did not say there was any kind of moral equivalence between the United States and Iran. Iran is an abhorrent regime. What I suggested is that the leaders of both countries are duplicitous in their negotiating styles and can't be trusted, which is why it's so hard for them
Thank
to
you for
reach an agreement
restating my
at 6.
correct argument.
That's not the same. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not. It's really not the same thing. I mean, how they negotiate, I think, is the big issue here. Trump is every day changing his mind about what the objectives are, what the goalposts are, what his red lines are, and Iran presumptively is doing the same. So how do you get two parties to the table where nobody's really sure if anybody is really on the up and up?
I think, unfortunately, at this point, the only way to bring the Iranians to the table with any sincerity is to make the partisans in Iran, the IRGC and other hardliners, adopt the same position of some of the Araghchi and Ghalibaf, who are more willing to negotiate. And I think the only way to do that might be with continued military strikes.
Do you still intend to take Karg Island?
So I can't say that to you because if I did, it would be foolish, right? But it'd be nice to make a little headlines, but it would be foolish. But I'll tell you about Karg Island. So we've already...
Are you ruling out a ground campaign in a limited capacity?
I don't want to say that either, but I would say no if I thought it was appropriate. I'd say sometimes you need a ground campaign, but we have other people that will do the ground campaign for us.
Why would you take any options off the table?
Who is he talking?
Who is he talking
campaign
about
for us? Who's going to do it
Who's
for
going to do
us?
that?
No, he's saying that we have other military
No, he said
assets.
we have other people that will do the ground campaign for us. That's what he said.
What I understood him to mean was that we have different ways of getting the outcomes that we want. And by the way, Israel does sit in the region over there dealing with this as well. But no matter, why would you take any options off the table in a television interview?
Well,
That would be crazy.
I think if Trump is really putting ground troops on the table, that is a profoundly
the enemy,
that is a
I won't do this
profoundly
and I won't do that.
unpopular. Well, I guess let's put it the other way. Iran knows that ground troops are not really on the table. They read the same polls that we do. Okay. They're not stupid. They understand that there's domestic politics that Trump has to deal with.
We had a brief incursion.
I don't see why would Iran even take that seriously.
But I take issue.
Are you mad that he wouldn't take it off the table, or that he?
Well, I think ground troops is something that this president said that he wasn't going to do. I don't think the American people want to send American soldiers in to fight this regime. I also just want to point out that I feel like there is just a casual passing by of an elimination or the killing of civilians to meet our outcome. He has said that before.
Like the 7 or 8 that were killed by Iran in strikes on boats in the Strait of Hormuz over the past week.
I'm
think
saying
this is
I
why
want to
the U.S.
hold.
should re-engage.
I want to hold my
taking back
president
the
to
strait.
a different standard than the Iranian regime.
And
we should. And I think that
by not operating terrorist proxies, by not developing nuclear weapons and
So
promises to
Joe,
eliminate other countries off the
are you
map.
okay? Are you okay if we just blanket kill civilians in Iran?
We're not blanket killing Iran. You're giving a hypothetical that is not true.
I'm
and
not living
happening.
a hypothetical. I have ears, and I heard what the president just said in an interview, and you heard it too, and then you also read it on
residential
Easter Day.
neighborhoods. He's not doing
But
that.
he's
To frame
saying
it as though the president of the United States is just indiscriminately bombing
I
civilians.
didn't say he
is
wasn't.
wrong.
I didn't
It's
say.
wrong
I
for you
didn't
to
say he
that.
is right now.
Let me
Have there been
just on
casualties?
this
Sure,
point.
but
Did he
just on
present
this
it as an
point-
option in that interview? And does that make you
He
comfortable?
presented the option of bombing power
Civilians.
plants. No, power plants and,
And
bridges.
people.
No, that's what he said.
And people.
Power plants
And their
bridges.
people.
And he
Okay.
said he teased the apocalypse. Yes, you know
And-
how you bring about the apocalypse? You allow Iran to get a
And
nuclear
people.
weapon and threaten
And
another
humans.
nuclear
Hold on.
power Israel.
Debris.
Hold
That's how
on,
you
hold
get
on.
the apocalypse.
Just two quick things. I mean, Trump did suggest that there would be nothing left, effectively, was what
Including
he said.
humans.
He
Iran
also
gets a
said,
nuclear weapon
no,
and
I'm
threatens
talking
Israel
about what
with it,
he,
and we have a
no,
nuclear
Joe,
war.
we're not changing the subject. We're talking about what he said he was going to do.
Yes.
He also threatened that a civilization would end. So I don't know what he means by that, but it seems to suggest that he's threatening the enemy with obliteration. But then here's what he said when he was asked about an attack that already happened on a school in which over 100 children and adults were killed. Here's what he said.
I don't think anybody's going to ever be able to say what happened there because if they don't know by now, and as of a couple of weeks ago, they didn't know. And while things like that happen in war, there are missiles flying all over the place. And I don't know how anybody could say that we shot it.
Look, CNN's reporting suggests that what he just said there is not true. According to our reporting, on July 7th, U.S. military officials knew within days of the strike on the school how that mistake happened. It was obviously old information. So, again, our standards are higher than Iran's. They're not the same. We don't hold ourselves to the Iranian standard. We hold ourselves to our standard. So when the president kind of glosses over this stuff, it undermines American values.
And their regime doesn't care if their citizens die. They operate on totally different rules. So I just think it's two people playing a game that don't have the same limitations. I mean, we have democracy here where people that live here get to have an opinion about the president's actions. And part of the reason we even engaged in this, part of how it was marketed in a sense to people at the top of this year was that Iran is a regime that subjugates its people. And we have to be the standard bearer for freedom. So we should care when those same people are then dying from our strikes.
I also think you can hold these two truths. I think you can say you want the Iranian regime to fall and you don't want them to have a nuclear weapon, and you also don't want our country to be the reason why Iranian civilians are killed.
But who's arguing that? Who's on the waving that flag? No, zero people. Exactly
president
zero
casually
people.
says
the president is not suggesting we bomb schools. The president is not suggesting we bomb civilians. Just stop saying it. It's nonsense.
All right, we're going to
Tell
leave it
him
there.